We shall see. What is up, crew? I think we are live. Just gonna check my phone over here to make sure that we are actually on the Facebook group and we're actually making sense here. One moment. All
Zap.
right. What is up? We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Automate Your Agency show number 9. Although in this show, we're going to be talking about hiring, hiring the right way, right? And so before we begin, I just want to introduce ourselves for those that are not familiar with our work. My name is Franbo. This is my business partner, Reynard. We both run
Zap.
an agency called Augment Digital, which serves self-funded brands all over the world. But at the same time, we run agency Rocket Fuel as well, which is a systems consulting building business where we help agencies really just scale, right? Scale to wherever they want to scale. Now, in this show, it's so important because when it comes to scaling and ultimately getting your time back as a business owner, right? It requires you to have people in place, right? People that can take over the work that you do, right? People that can really treat your clients as much as you do. And we get this a lot from clients after we've kind of built all their systems. We kind of have all these cool SOPs and automations in place. It's like, how do I find that right person? And in this show, we're gonna talk about how we can do that, how you can really shift the way that you really think about hiring. Now, let us know in the comments whether you are watching live, hashtag live, or replay, hashtag replay, so we can send you more stuff on hiring. Last week we did a show, kind of like some cool automations that you can really implement when hiring, and I'd love to send that over to you. Just comment hashtag live or replay down below. If you want to watch our previous shows, check out the unit section. If you're on your desktop or laptop, it's over to your left. If you're on mobile, it's up top. Just click that button and you'll see all our past 8 shows. We've been doing it's crazy. We've been doing this for the last 8 weeks now. This is our ninth
Nice.
show every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now we are live. I have Denise over here. Denise
Hey,
is just
Denise.
yeah, Denise is just fantastic. She's one of the top marketers in the real estate space, and I think she's still in real estate right now. So if you guys need any help with that, go check out Denise. Now, Reynard, why is this important? Why are most agency owners getting their hiring wrong? And what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, for sure. So, we just wanted for this, for this show, like we wanted to go a bit more foundational because like last week we were very tactical with like the zaps with the automations and we want to be like that for the Automate Your Agency show. But we thought it would be cool and we did get a few questions like asking like how does this work? Like why do you do things like this way? Why do we decide to, do this why is this the sequence of things we do? Things and yeah we just wanted to go share a bit about that on this show, right? So where like when it comes to hiring, the number one question we usually get or the number one situation we usually see is that like people don't work out but it takes time before people like the agency sees that, right? So and when it comes to hiring it's like most agencies take the let's bring you on like based on your credentials maybe or like a few messages back and forth you feel good, you bring them on and then you find out like as you already onboard them like hey they're not so much of a good fit, right? And sometimes you try to make excuses to yourself like hey no maybe they're just learning kind of thing or like maybe it's just the first part, but in most cases that isn't true. You just gotta cut them, right? So yeah, so that's why like it's really important that before you even start your hiring, like you gotta have good systems in place, right? By that we mean you know what to expect out of a person who comes in, and what KPIs do you want to hold them against? Because like if someone comes in and then you're not even sure like what you want them to do and what you expect them to achieve in your company, it's like you won't be able to make that confident decision that okay I'm gonna cut them, right? Because you're gonna be in that gray area where like they might be doing well, they might not be, oh but they're nice to me, they speak well, but in the end you're hiring people to get load off your plate, not for them to talk to you nicely every day or so, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Like before we even do any hiring, we gotta have systems in place. So we give the applicant or like the person who's coming on board the best chance of success. This is a bit different depending on the spectrum in which we hire. because there are more entry level roles, which is like data entry, transcription, and there are more intermediate roles like running ads, media buying. And there are of course more senior roles where you're taking senior management, or like someone to come in and manage your entire like department or something like that. So depending on that spectrum, you're gonna want to have as many in this side, which is like people who are more entry level. You want to have as many processes as possible for them to take on, because your qualification, how you qualify these people, will be purely based on their ability to do the task and hit the KPI. It's almost only that, like people who are doing like data entry or like VA work kind of thing. You need to really hold them against accountable to the execution, not really the thinking, right? But that could come later. But as you onboard people, you're looking for someone who can execute and really follow those orders. And you can't do that if you don't have your SOPs in place, right? So that's number one, right? That's why having systems is important, because again, without them, you won't be able to know if like were they good, were they bad, did I really give them the best shot of success? You don't know that, right? So that's number one. But as you go through that scale, you can especially for more senior kind of hires, you can get away with not having a good, like a very strong system, because in the first place you're bringing them on to help you build maybe that new department, or help you maybe build that department to be stronger, so you want them to be able to think, right? So for roles like that, the more senior level roles, you're not looking for someone who can just follow orders, but you're looking for someone who is really autonomous and can think on their own and can build the system with you, right? So that's where the scale is. And this matters because if you don't identify this as well, you won't be able to like say, okay, what's going to be the structure of how I assess the applicants, right? Because without knowing that, because how you assess applicants in this level, which is the more entry level, and the more senior level is totally different, right? And it affects how your process looks like, and affects how quickly you can do this process without you being in it, right? So yeah, so that's the first part of things. All right, friends, is there anything you want to add into that?
No, that makes perfect sense. And if you guys are watching live, or even if you're a replay, let us know what your biggest questions are around hiring. What are some of the struggles that you've been facing, when it comes to really just bringing people on board, whether it's creating the job post, whether it's thinking of the SOPs, or even just figuring out, like, who your first hire should be. Let us know in the comments below so we can answer it on the show. We'll be here for the next 20, probably 25 minutes, and we'll make sure we'll treat you like a private client, right? In this show. Now, what Rainer said is absolutely right? Typically, when it comes to hiring, and what I've found, at least in my experience, it boils down to either it's a people problem, or it's a process problem, right? Sometimes you get the wrong person, but more often than not, it could also be your process, right? And what that means is, do you have, like, when you have someone on board, like, do they know exactly where they are in your entire system? Do they know exactly what their KPIs are, what they're responsible for? And oftentimes, entrepreneurs, they don't have that, right? They don't kind of have that process issue, and we're led to believe that it might be the person's fault, when really you have the right person, you just have the wrong process in place, right? And so I think we made a post before, which had a ton of engagement, right? If you put the right person in the wrong system, it's like they become the wrong person, right? So one of the things that we want to talk about in this show, right, is Reynard had that spectrum. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it's we also have the talent acquisition kind of funnel, right? So that makes sense. Right? There is a question over here from Denise.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled a lot when I hired my virtual assistant. I'm struggling now, needing someone to do video editing and trying to get a good person for that. So that's one of the struggles that she has. So maybe we can tackle that later. We can just move on, or you can answer that right now.
Sure, yeah. So that will be, yeah, I'll answer it as we get into the flow of things. So yeah, going back to the spectrum side, right? So again, there's entry level, and then there's like more experience. So how that affects thing is that for more entry level roles, you need to test for that through skills, right? What you're testing for is primarily skills. So how we like to structure the process in which we qualify applicants is we always start with a form. Like we always start by filtering from you don't want to put a job post and say, hey, just message me if you're interested. You shouldn't be doing that, because you'll waste a lot of time, and excuse me, you'll waste a lot of time, and then you won't get any data on the person. You're gonna have to go back and forth, ask them like questions in like 5 different emails before you get any actual anything out of it. So first touch, you gotta have an application form of sorts that asks the most important questions that matter to you, primarily on your team culture and then the skills you're looking for, right? So the questions you ask are something like, how do you deal with an issue, a situation like X, Y, Z, right? Because like you want to give them situational questions, um, not like future, like how. Sorry, I worded it wrong. It's not like how would you do. It's like what have you done in the past when you've faced a situation like this. So the technique with questions like this in either culture or skills is really asking previous experience and not asking what they would do, because what they would do is different from what they do. Very, very, very different. So this is like the biggest mindset shift we had probably 3 4 months in, like when we started Augment Digital. When I brought the first few people I onboarded were probably like people I already knew, like around my circle, so I had no problem. But then as we started expanding our the reach of our our hiring, it was like how do you really filter them as objectively as possible? And something we learned in the book, the book's right here. I think I forgot the name, but then I don't know which book it is. But then we learned in a book that you shouldn't be asking questions like "What would you do?" because they're gonna tell you the ideal scenario. They're gonna like, I'm gonna, of course, I'm gonna like answer this. I'm gonna do this, 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 but that's never usually what they're gonna actually do. So a good way to ask that question is like, what have you done in the past in a previous project, right? Or like, tell me about a previous experience where you had to manage like 20 different tasks. How did you handle it? So you want them to be specific. You don't want them to like get make up a random situation like, hey, if I had 20 tasks, this is what I would do. It's not accurate at all. Right. So those are the questions we ask in the application form, just to like do some pre-filtering of like understanding what do you what does the applicant what's the context behind this applicant and the role they're applying for, right? Do they have the skills? Do they have experience? Let's say if you're looking for a video editor, so maybe you can ask them, tell me about the most complex video job you did and how you went about it, right? Or you can ask like, what's your favorite tools when it comes to video editing, or like, who do you follow when it comes to being continuously inspired for video editing, right? So those are the questions that we usually ask, especially the who do you follow. The who do you follow is a pretty like Trojan horse question that not many people use, and the reason why we like using it is because you get to feel if this person actually gives crap about like the work he does. Because if it's someone like, no, I don't follow anyone, I just like I just do. You don't want a person like that, because like that's someone who isn't driven enough to do his own research, who isn't continuously looking for a way to inspire herself, to do new things, to learn new things. So that's a question that's been really helpful in terms of like being able to weed out people. Because like if they're like no one, or like example in the Facebook ads industry, which is what we're in, it's very easy for me to see the experience level of someone based on who he follows, right? So example in Facebook ads, one of the more beginner level experts out there is John Loomer. Nothing against John, but like he's more of like he caters to the more newbie audience. So when I look at the list of applicants, and then at the other end of the spectrum, you have people like Tim Bird, Kat Howell, Depeche Mandalia, who do like really advanced Facebook ad stuff, right? So when I ask that, when we hire for an ad specialist and we ask like, who do you follow, and most of them say like, oh, John Loomer, or I follow Neil Patel, and Neil Patel doesn't even do Facebook ads. He's like a Google Ads guy. Or like they say like, I follow Social Media Examiner, I follow like Facebook Business Blueprint. I was like, cool. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it speaks to their how deep are they in the industry, right? How deep are they into research? How deep are they into the not into the material? Because if they don't follow like people like the more advanced people in the space, like people only really advanced ads people know, then you know that they haven't really gone deep. They're not that in deep yet, right? But again, that's just a data point. You can't say like, oh, this person doesn't follow like Depeche Mandalia, let's kick him out. You can't do that too. Like you gotta read the other questions, but that's a very important data point. Most people don't like overlook like who do they follow, right? So if we see someone like who follows Depeche, Timber, people are like, oh, this is pretty interesting. He's pretty updated. He knows like who's the latest in the game kind of thing. So that's kind of what we ask, and the reason again is so that we can get some filtration happening from the start, So whoever we talk to, we already have contacts. We know a bit of their experience. We know about what they've done in the past. So when we talk to them, we have more information and we lessen the amount of time we spend going back and forth. Right. So that's how we
So
usually do it. Yeah.
let's do a quick recap. So Denise says great ideas, and so just a quick recap, guys. Right, a few things that we just tackled here. Right, it's really thinking one is thinking about your hiring process as a funnel, and so Rena is talking about an application form, and just like lead generation, just like marketing, right? We really want to filter our leads for like like for our funnels, and it's the same with hiring as well. It's so important that you have an application form, and again, this comes from our own experience. Like we filter through hundreds and hundreds of applications every single week. There's one job post, I think, Reynard, we had like 600 applicants from that. And so really being able to think about, your hiring process as a funnel where, at the top, there's your job description, which is kind of like, and we'll get into that in a bit, but it's like your copywriting, right? And then, once you get to that job description, there's like an application form that they fill out so we can filter people out. And so a few key things here as well is, don't ask them what they would do, but ask them, what have you done, right, in the past, or what has your experience been about this particular situation? And also another thing is, who do you follow, right? Being able to just figure out like how deep they are in kind of like the industry. So there's just some key points there that we've covered so far. Once again, guys, if you're watching, let us know #live or #replay so we can send you more goodies, more trainings, so you can really make the most out of the content that we have here in our Facebook group. So moving on, we have the application form. People fill it up. We have some questions over there to filter them out, right? What else do we need to really think about?
Yeah. So once you have the application form, people come in. Next stage is you're gonna talk to them, right? So again, this depends though on this is where the spectrum thing comes into play because you can have roles where you don't talk to them and you go straight to a test, right? Especially here in the entry level. Imagine like we had 500 people, 500, 600 people apply for the transcription role across different sites, and I'm not gonna talk to even 10% of that. 10% of 500 is 50. 50 times 20-minute call is 100, 1,000 minutes just to find someone to do transcription. So, our next stage is usually an intro call. That's for the average role. We usually do an intro call. And the reason why we do an intro call is we just want to get context behind the things they said in the application. And there's nothing that there's something about speaking to a person and get to hear them and get to their how they say things and how passionate they are about certain things that's you can't see in an application form, right? So the intro call adds another layer of data for you to use to assess if like, okay, are these guys, is this person like really did they really mean what they said in their application form, right? And this is another chance for you to kind of get a feel of like what they like to converse with and to communicate, right? So the intro call is about really nailing down like that culture aspect. It's not really about the skills yet. It's about the culture. Like, do you like speaking with them? Do they have that like mentality of really getting it, right? And it's like you're able to identify if the person is really, you know, someone you want to work with when you get on the call, right? And it gives you some more context. As example, if you do choose to move forward with them, of like why do they do certain things when they do like the test task, right? Because you will meet people who may not perfectly do your test. After I will get to that in a bit, but might have been a really you see from the conversation you had in the interview that it was they have the experience. They just they're just really still kind of like figuring out or something. So you have more context behind what happens next, right? Because sometimes you get people who come in, they have trouble doing the test task for the start, but then what if they're actually like they're great communicators, they just need some iteration. So you can't really do that if you don't know, if you haven't spoken to them and you disqualify them directly, right? So that's why we do an intro call first, and after the intro call, if they're good, we move them to a test task where we actually let them perform the tasks that we expect them to do in the future, right? So it could be like making a transcription, it could be setting up a Facebook ad campaign, it could be setting up high level, whatever it is. You need to test the person for whatever you want them to do. And this is again where we go back to that KPI we made. So whatever your KPI is, example, if your KPI is to set up a new campaign in less than 15 minutes, then you should be asking that from the test task. that what you should be assessing for is like, okay, please set up this campaign and let me know how long it took you, right? Let me know how long it took you. And like you have like maybe a form that collects that data from all the people who took your test, right? The reason why is because you want to, as objectively as possible, now that we're moving to the testing phase, objectively as possible, figure out what their skill set is and like where they're at in terms of their ability to hit your KPIs. Because if you're just gonna leave it up to chance and you're not gonna test how they work, you're gonna be surprised later on, right? So it's always important to get that testing done, no matter how good they speak to you, right? Because I know I mentioned a situation where like they're great to speak with and they don't do really well, and from the conversation they can be better. There might be cases where like they speak really well, but from the task, like they're really really far off from the KPI. Example, if your KPI is 15 minutes and they do it in 16, then yeah, okay, maybe this person's still okay. But then you have like a 15-minute task and they take 25 minutes, and you're like, okay, this is not worth it, right? So the task really adds that layer of objectivity. So it's like it's for sure they can do things right within the time frame or like within the quality you're asking for. So going back to the video editor question, it's like, let's say you've had the call with a person and you're like, I'm just asking questions in terms of like, can you tell me a bit more about your experience? What do you do in certain situations? What's your availability like? um, when you move them to like a testing phase, you basically ask them to do whatever kind of work you usually do. So, example, if you usually make videos for ads, give them like access to some clients' raw assets, like maybe raw media that you usually edit, and then tell them like, hey, let's try. Can you do this in an hour or something, and come up with something? Or if your goal is to screen for quality and not turnaround time, and then you're gonna have a more subjective view of like, okay, can you do this? And then you're gonna assess like, is it good from a quality standpoint, right? And even that can be systematized over time, but that's another conversation. But yeah, so having the test will really help you figure out if the person's good or not even before you hire them. You get a feel of the kind of work they do, their workflow, their ability to communicate, their turnaround times. You gotta know that before you bring on anyone, so you make the best informed decision in terms of like who to go with after, right? So that's kind
That
of
makes
like the
sense.
next phase. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people kind of just hopping on here, but like we have Daniel, we have Jovel. Daniel, by the way, is one of our clients. Jason, and just to give
Hey.
you guys a recap, what we're talking about so far. Two main things here, right? One is kind of transforming and thinking about your hiring process into a talent acquisition funnel. If we're all in the marketing field here, thinking about your hiring process as a funnel, and our funnel so far has been job description, and from the job description it goes to the application form where we have certain questions that we've designed, right, to really fit, find the cream of the crop, if we can say that, right? From the application form, you either move to an introduction call, depending on where that scale is, right? The skill scale that we talked about at the beginning of this training video. And then, if you don't do an intro call, then having them have a test task, right? Like a testing period, right? They could either follow an SOP that you have, or it could be like having them create a strategy on a specific case study or whatever, some form of test, right? And I think Reynard, like ideally, this is a paid test, right? If it's possible for the company to do it, or if it's a very simple test, then it could just be a free kind of like testing thing. But those are the four things so far in our funnel, right? Job description, application form, introduction call if needed, and then a test task, if that makes sense.
Yep, for sure. So right after that task is when we then move into like a final interview, where we kind of get their context of like how did they enjoy doing the work, right? What was their challenge? So the big thing now is you want to ask them and screen for like what was the you want to ask them like did they enjoy it? Of course, like how did you find the task involved? Is it something you've done before? Can you tell us about an experience where you've done similar work at more like scale? I guess because it's like one task. Another question you can ask, which has been really important for us, is really the question of like, what was the biggest challenge you encountered going through the process, right? Going through the task. And this is twofold. One is you want them to open up, right? You don't want to work with people who's not gonna tell you where they were challenged. They're gonna be like, yeah, I don't have any problems. Like this was easy, right? Some people, it's fine, but then you don't want someone who isn't open to kind of like criticism or like things they've got all figured out. There's like a fine line between, confidence and like, of course, like being open to like seeing like where the issues are and like, how it could be better. So no matter how baller you are with a certain thing, it's like there's always a way to that you will be challenged, and like there's always something that you probably got stuck with. May it be like actually doing the work or like some admin stuff or whatever it is. Right. So that's number one. With that question, like what challenged you is that you want them to open up. Second is if you want someone who's gonna tell you stuff to improve. Like even if the task was easy to do and they got everything done, you want someone who could tell you, hey, yeah, this was easy to do, but what if we do it like this instead? Right. So you want someone who's gonna think about these things, right? So it again depends on that spectrum. If you're in the more entry level, you don't really expect that, but if you screen 500 people, like you're bound to find gold in that sense. Like you will find someone who thinks like that. You will find someone who actually gives a crap and like tells you, hey, can we do it this way next time and not do it this way, right? That's what I think can be. That was a challenge in this task, and I think we can do it better next time, right? So in this final interview, you're kind of getting just like a feel of like what they, what they felt like going through the task and what their challenges were, and like what they would improve moving forward, right? And that will speak a lot to the type of person they are, and like the type of person they would be working, like what would it be like working with them moving forward, right? So that's like the final piece. Like once you get that, if you look at the entire system, the entire funnel that Fran talked about, you go from the usual model of like just speaking to someone and like going back and forth in like 5 emails and then hiring them, to really understanding like first, are they even worth listening to, right? The application form. um Figuring out, are they a good culture fit through the intro call. Figuring out if they're a good skill fit through the test project, and then wrapping up, would they be good to work with moving forward? Do they think about, are they open, are they transparent, are they willing to like, think about ways to improve the work and not just do the work, right? So you cover the entire spectrum of almost a work relationship in these like 4 to 5 steps, right? So that's kind of like the goal when you get to the final interview, and of course by then you can then make a decision like, okay, I'm gonna move forward with this guy or this girl based on like what you see, right? So
Sounds amazing. And
yep.
that's kind of like on a high level, that's the funnel. And which leads us to a great question again by Denise.
Mhm.
When you think about funnels, right? It's one funnel, but they're different traffic sources, right?
Yeah.
If it were a marketing agency, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you Google, whatever. But there are also different traffic sources when it comes to your talent acquisition funnel. So Denise is asking, where are you posting to find people? Now, just to give you some context, we do a lot of hiring for our own company, but for other agencies as well, and a lot of these positions are remote, right? And so we have different kind of like platforms. But the funnel, again, the theory is that this funnel works, whether it's a remote position, whether it's, a local position or whatnot, maybe some few tweaks there. But right now, where are we currently posting to find people?
Yeah, so we post on, wait, what is it got? Wait, my throat hurts. We post in Upwork, freelancer.com, free up, onlinejobs.ph, and we post in a bunch of groups that we're in, freelancing groups, like anything under the sky, like in Facebook. So that's why the application form is really important, because you don't want to put a job post on Facebook and like have them like message you and like fill your inbox with a bunch of questions. Like just send the form and let them go through that, and you have like a place, like where one place where you can assess everyone, no matter what traffic source. So you're basically like funneling them into one place, so it's easy to deal with, and you don't have to be like, oh, like I'm gonna check my messages on Upwork, my messages on Facebook for this new applicants. Excuse me, you don't have to deal with that. So those are the usual places we post in. Um, and the biggest thing people forget about is their own network. Like, you have great people in your network. Always tap them, like post in your profile, ask like friends that may know someone. That's also like, a really great place, especially for more senior roles. Like, something we've learned is always to continuously ask people, like, would you know anyone who would be a great fit for our company? Right. So whenever you meet someone, and you've also, of course, have built some rapport with them and like talk to them, it's always a question I try to bring up. Is like, would you know anyone who'd be interested to join the company? We're looking for someone, XYZ. Right. So that's the most likely place you're gonna find the most quality people, especially in the later end of the spectrum, more senior, more like self starter rather than entry level, is by asking your network. Because like there's a ton of gold there, and that's where most of your more, you know, in this end of the spectrum will be taken from.
Makes sense. We have a question here from Daniel Gonzalez, which we had a call with him earlier, but which I can speak to this, and Ray, you can add to this as well. But what if you already have a virtual assistant already who does a number of different tasks currently, but trying to find what they are really good at? How do you move forward from there? Now, we have a great experience in our end because this is Karen, bro. We hired a transcriptionist at the start. Right, we needed some of our stuff transcribed. It was like an hourly thing. And so she did such a great job. She did such a great job at it. But just to give you guys an idea, this transcriptionist eventually became a sales advisor in our company. And right now she's writing copy. Like she's writing copy. And we didn't really think about that. Now, as I look back into that experience, we didn't have an idea that she could actually be in that role. But as I kind of interviewed her and kind of had more talks with her, one thing that I really asked is like, what was her prior work experience? What were some of the things that she actually enjoyed before working with us? And she had some sales experience. She had some kind of like creative experience. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of like an interesting thing there. But at the same time, as she keeps working with us, we kind of found like she was like an A player, right? Like she actually would mention some of the struggles that she has, some of the feedback that she can give. And so from there, we kind of made that decision of like, yeah, we can actually move her to another role. Now, if you already have an existing virtual assistant, right? And one of the things is really just asking them, right? Like, are they open to other positions? And if they are, what kind of positions are they open for, right? And so that's one thing there. But for you, Rainer, like for this question, what do you think Daniel can do?
The question was like, what? How do we upskill? Basically, like, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, so it's like he has an existing virtual assistant, right? Who does multiple different things in the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're still trying to find like what she's really good at, like what kind of specific role. I think maybe this VA, and Daniel, let us know if we're not hitting the mark here. But I'm assuming like she does multiple different things, maybe in fulfillment, sales, marketing, admin, and stuff like that. How do you move forward to having them just focused on one, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it'll be a mix of like what they want to do and like what you want to put them in, right? So it's like you also ask the owner of the company and stuff. You gotta have the direction to say like, hey, can let's do this instead. And then if they really can't adopt kind of thing, and then they can't take it on, um, then you can say that, okay, let's revert you back to that other role or like these other tasks. But it's something to have an open conversation with your team about. But something to keep in mind is don't, as much as it matters what they want to do, sometimes they don't know how capable they are, like your team, and this expands, the entire, VA or whatever role it is. Sometimes your team doesn't know that they're actually capable of doing things, and sometimes they just need a little push, right, to know that. So keep that in mind. So if give them a test, like approach it the same way as this funnel, where same thing. You don't have to deal with culture anymore because you know that they're fit, they're in your company already, unless that's also a problem. So you're just gonna test them, like, hey, can you do these quick tasks and see what you feel? Something you're interested in. Does it maybe it's challenging? What you're looking for is someone who would say, yeah, it was hard, but I liked it, right? Because new tasks are always going to be hard. Like you throw someone into an entirely new role, but if they enjoyed it, that's a pretty good sign that like that's actually worth. Let's give it more shot, right? So I would just go ahead and like ask her, can you do this, and like just for a test, and see what her reaction is. If he or she doesn't like responds poorly, and then you make a decision like, okay, let's not move you there. And then if your plan is to really want this role to become that role, then that is a problem because they can't advance. And maybe it's a question of like asking them like, how can we make this easier for you? And if it's not, maybe it's not the best fit for that person to ascend to that role. So you maybe have to hire someone else who can one day ascend to that role, right? So does that make sense, Fran? Like,
Yeah, no, I think so. Awesome. Yes, been doing that to see what else he is good at. Yeah,
yes,
cool. Yeah, so
good.
just having that conversation with your team member, putting him in different roles and see which one kind of like he excels at, right? Or maybe he's just the type of person that he's like your executive assistant or like a project manager that he can be in different kind of like roles, right? So that's something you can test with over time.
Yep.
And something we can definitely talk about in our private calls, Daniel. So um, once again, guys, in this show, what we really just wanted to help you get out is that you think about your hiring process as a funnel. And just to recap, we have a job description, application form. From the application form, we either move them to an introduction call. If you don't need an introduction call based on that scale that we talked about, just move them straight to a test, right? Either a paid test, and then just have them do a couple of things that are required from the role. And then from that test, we move a couple people down to the bottom of the funnel, which is your final interview, right? And in your final interview, you want to ask them, what were some of the challenges that they faced, but same time, what feedback do they have for the company? What improvements do they think you can make as a business owner and as a leader? And what you're looking for is someone that is proactive in giving you that feedback and actually wanting to make your business, like better, right? Instead of just like saying, no, everything was good, right? So
Yep.
that's kind of like high level. That's the funnel over there. And I think at this point, if you guys have any other questions, let us know in the comments below. If not, we're just going to wrap this call up. But,
Yep.
we do this every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've done this for the last 9 weeks now. Next week is going to be our 10th week. We might do something special. I don't know. We'll see. But let us know if you have any other questions down below. With that, anything that you wanted to cover, Reynard?
No, that should be it. Like, yeah, I think you wrapped it up pretty well. Approach your hiring as a funnel. Because in the future you should not be doing that as well. Like as much as like it's a high leverage task in a sense, even hiring can be delegated out. You just have to think of like what are the parameters you filter for, and that's why looking at it as a system and like as a funnel instead of like I have to ask these guys a question. I have to feel no, it's not you. It's really a system thing, right? So that will then further accelerate your growth like once you've nailed it down, so you can just get that system running, have someone else run it like in your team, and yeah, it's just going to be training and training new people for your team as you scale, right? So yeah, looking at it as a funnel, just I hope like people watching this show get the thinking pattern behind the stuff we do. That's really the most important part, like how we're thinking about things, because you can like interpret this in many ways. Like you can do whatever you want, like how you want to build the funnel, but what's important is like the principles behind it, which is like really understanding how they work before you bring them on full time, so you get a full spectrum of what they do before like you tell like you tell them like let's go on board and work together for a long period, because there's a lot of cost when it comes to onboarding a new person, a lot of opportunity cost, a lot of actual cost as well, that you can avoid if you have this process in place. So yeah.
Makes sense. So with that, this entire training is actually part of a three-part kind of like framework that we have that we're starting to call the 3M systems trifecta. And the 3M is really man, machine, manifesto. And we believe in Agency Rocket Fuel, if you have these 3Ms in place, you can have a business that can truly scale. And this particular training is in the man section, right? But if you only have the man part of your system down, your human resources, right? And you don't have the machine part, which is the automations, and you don't have the manifesto part, which is your SOPs, then it's still gonna fail, right? So if you guys want more insight, if you guys want more kind of like advice on how you can implement the 3M framework, right? Man, machine, manifesto into your business, into your agency, go ahead and check out agencyrocketfuel.com. We have a few spots
Yep.
open in our calendar to just give you some advice on how you can implement this into your business. Go ahead and check out agencyrocketfuel.com. With that, if you don't have other questions, we will wrap this up. You can always watch the replay unit section, and we'll see you guys on the next show. Thanks, and have a good evening
Yep. See you
or
guys.
good morning wherever you're in the world. So see you guys.
See you guys.